Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. This video is sponsored by Southern New Hampshire University and their online Bachelor of Science in Computer Game Design. More on that later. In a prior video, I set forth 6 core issues with the base building system that CIG teased at Citizencon and will be developing starting next year. Now I'm going to dig into them in more detail. In this one, I'm going to cover the first 2. First, when real money has been collected for something, it should be delivered as closely to literally exactly as described, and when in doubt, under the most generous application of what was described. Now, this should particularly apply when providing the item exactly as described does not carry an additional cost. So this goes first to this item from Todd Pappy's presentation.
So with the land claim, you put your tool down where you want, you launch the drone, that is built into the machine, and then from there, this allows the player to access the base building and also land claim mode. With the land claim modes, the player can actually change the size and position of what area they want to claim, and it also shows you the cost and taxes associated with it. If it's in a taxable zone and you don't own the land, this interface will default to it.
So, what's the problem? The problem is that CIG has sold the geotech and has sold lots that are 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers square and estates that are 8 kilometers by 8 kilometers square. Even as recently as this last IAE, those lucky enough to win the F5 war for a Pioneer were promised an 8 kilometer by 8 kilometer square land claim bundled with it. So you think just give them a circle with the same area, big deal. Except circular plots of land are really dumb. And to cite that, I'm going to go into a comprehensive discussion of every human culture in history that has both accepted private land ownership and used circular plots to do it. Ready? Finished. No human society has both recognized private ownership and used circular boundaries. And I will extrapolate further that no intelligent species ever would, because the problems aren't with society, but with geometry. This area is less than 44% filled, yet cannot accommodate one more plot of the same size. Anybody wanting to add to this area must first accept a smaller plot. Then, even a maximally efficient layout of circles, which would require the game to pre-allocate the parcels, is only about 66% efficient. Rectilinear parcels, of course, can be 100% efficient without difficulty. But spatial inefficiency also matches with computational inefficiency. The calculations of whether something or someone is inside or outside a rectilinear area is simple mathematics. The computations of whether something is inside or outside a circle is more complex, and thus, since millions of such calculations might have to be done on a server each second, impactful. This particularly goes in a dynamic server meshing environment. The shard has to define a border, then dividing this area between 2 servers, ideally in a way that would not be splitting a particular lot between 2 servers, since splitting a lot between servers might mean having the boundary go through the middle of a building, which is less desirable in a full server environment. There is another problem with circular lots. Let's say you and your friends want to cooperate and create a larger community by getting lots with common borders and trade and operate across them, except circular plots can't have common borders. They can only have a single point of tangency, and that leaves open the possibility for foes to infiltrate right in the middle of the community you are hoping to create. Now, when I talk about all this unclaimed and unclaimable space, some will, including CIG and their FAQ about land claims, state that it doesn't matter because the planets are so huge with so much space. And I believe they are ignoring that because of human nature, the most desirable locations will, by definition, be in scarce supply. But you might reply, the planets are so huge, there'll be plenty of desirable land. And I didn't say that there wouldn't be plenty of desirable land, or even that there wouldn't be plenty of highly desirable land, or even wouldn't be plenty of extremely desirable land, or even plenty of extremely highly desirable land. I said most desirable land. Because if someone given a compare between 2 plots of extremely highly desirable land, they will still find a reason why one is just a tiny bit more desirable than the other. And if they can't think of any other reason, they will find that the more desirable land is the one they can't have. The Earth has lots of land, but some carries a much higher price than the rest, and some tiny spots of land we fight wars and commit atrocities over. So I'll just sum it up as this. Squares were sold, people bought squares, squares are better, use squares. And second, which you'll see merges into it, is the experience of making your base be your outpost should be able to duplicate the capabilities of having your base be at a space station or landing zone. Because if folks are saying that you have to give up a lot of convenience to not have your home be on a station, well, they won't. Now, in the recent ISC on development in cargo and hangars, it was clear that a big part of our personal space in the verse will be our persistent hangar, including the freight elevator and presumed automated warehouse that will be behind them. So if the goal and the sales pitch of base building is to build your home in the verse, it isn't going to be able to meet that without having at least the option of having a hangar and freight elevator, because so much that what one would expect in our home in the verse would be missing. Now, I know that some players are envisioning something more basic for their outposts, like we're already seeing in the abandoned stations in the verse, and surely that choice should be available too. But if the slogan of the whole effort is to build your home in the verse, the option of being able to have your fully functioning persistent hangar there is also essential. Now, this crosses over into the first issue isn't whether we should be able to buy them, but whether we already have. Look in your account, and there is, with every game package and every add-on ship, an entry for a hangar. And not just any hangar, but a particular model and manufacturer, one presumably large enough for the ship it came with. Now, some old statements would suggest that all that represents is the ability to land the craft at a temporary hangar wherever you go. But that makes no sense, because we have that right even with ships we have rented for a day. Moreover, when we land at a station, we don't get that exact model of hangar we presumably bought with the ship. So, following the principle of interpreting what we purchased as generously, literally, reasonably possible, why not say that we actually, with each of those hangars, we get the ability to go, say, to the AeroView sales office and bring up our plot of land for our land claim and say, here on my layout, put the hangar and warehouse here, essentially claiming the hangar that we bought, much like claiming the ship that we bought. You can also presume the same process to claim your personal hangar on a station or landing zone that uses AeroView hangars. Now, for the land claim example, the warehouse that goes with it would still need to be bought. After all, you still want there to be some money sink in the process. But for the hangars, you bought it, you own it. Now, yes, that is more generous than you might have thought was meant, but seriously, once the cost of designing the hangars is done, there's no real cost to CIG with creating one more in the verse. So being generous with whatever it means to own a hangar in the game package has little cost, but a lot of potential goodwill for the player base. And that's important. Which allows me to segue to this video sponsor, the online Bachelor of Science in Computer Game Programming from Southern New Hampshire University. For some time, I've noted that it's important that it be regionally accredited, which may seem strange since for most things, like sports and markets, the national level is considered more prestigious than the regional level. But with accreditation, it is exactly the opposite. You see, unlike saying you're a doctor or a lawyer or an architect, there is no legal requirement you must be met before you can call yourself a university or a college. But in the late 1800s, yes, way back then, the most prestigious universities, the ones known to be what you might call a league, named after the vegetation on their walls, it created associations of evaluators who would travel to each college and evaluate them against a set of high standards so that these ivy-encrusted institutions would know whether the college's students would measure up for transfer credits, recognizing their diplomas in admissions for advanced degrees, and in hiring for staff and faculty, which are still the three main reasons why getting a degree from an accredited school is important: credit, admissions, and employment. Now, in the late 1800s, travel was still by horse, so they had to be regional in scope. And currently there are 6 regional accreditation entities, including the New England Commission on Higher Education, which accredits SNHU, and as an institutional accreditation, covers all of the over 200 online degrees offered by SNHU, along with their on-campus programs. Now later, other institutions who would not meet the standards of the regional accreditation boards, typically because they were either very narrow in scope or for-profit businesses, formed their own accreditation agencies. And because nationwide travel was now feasible, they were national in scope, or national accreditation, which doesn't automatically mean that they are bad, but is worth noting that all of the high-profile failures that left students with nothing were either unaccredited or nationally accredited for-profit businesses. But among the regionally accredited universities, SNHU is recognized as an innovator in the breadth of its online programs, the scope of its student services, and the very low cost per unit. If that's interesting to you, go to snhu.edu/raiseguide and fill out the form and talk to a real person about your future direction, whether that is with a computer game design degree or something else. Again, that is snhu.edu/raiseguide. Now for an update on our Grow the Channel giveaways. As of recording, we are at 78% of the member goal and 89% of the subscriber goal to give one lucky player the Zippy Zazzy Zaftig Zephyr Zeus 2 cargo, and then beyond that, 59% of the member goal and 2/3 of the subscriber goal for the multi-user, multi-role mining meta, the Astra. One entry per video, just be a member and for automatic entry, or subscribe and comment, somehow including the secret word. And the secret word for this video is the reason, even if everything else is identical, that someone will see that a plot of land is more desirable because. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Danny Raymond for Ray's Guide.